So the LCK Spring 2016 final just concluded a couple of hours ago, and SK Telecom won it. They went 3-1, taking it over Rocks Tigers, securing their third champions title in a row as well. This on top of their world's title, the IAM Katowice title, and what's likely going to be their MSI title coming up. So, I wanted to talk about my own thoughts on the particular series. I wanted to kind of see like what we understanding from each of the teams. I've already explored the storylines going into this one in an article for Slingshot that did very well on Reddit, so I'm very happy about that. So I'm not going to really explore like, what was on the line here, because I think everyone sort of knew what was on the line for these teams. For Rocks Tigers, it was finally making it their year. It's beating their old rival, SK Telecom. It's, Smeb, the greatest top laner in the world, securing his trophy. And then for SK Telecom, it's continuing the reign. It's showing that, hey, Koma can take any player, groom them into a champion, which he's done so with Duke, and he's done so with Blank now. And I want to talk about that element in a little bit. So let's open up by talking first about the series. Now, even though the scoreline is 3-1, this is a very different 3-1 than what we saw at the 2015 World Championship. At the World Championship, SK Telecom was so far ahead of everybody else, had such a finely tuned system that no one else could touch them at all. Faker was an absolute monster at that tournament, so Kuro couldn't step up to him. Marin was given so much resources that no top laner could really come close to competing with him. I mean, Smeb was, but Smeb didn't have the same amount of resources that Marin got invested into him. Bangi was, Meta was perfect for Bangi, and Bang has really shown that he is the best AD carry in the world. I think he's shown it for well over a year now, and I think he once again proved it tonight. And then Wolf, good support. What can you say? But this final was very entertaining, and it was very back and forth throughout nearly every single game. The one exception being Game 1, which is, as a Rocks fan, just peeves me personally, just because why does this have to happen? But even in that case, just for the sake of, as a spectator, that game was decided like level 1. Because when Prey and Gorilla walked into Wolf and Bang in a bush, and Prey rather, had to use both of his summoners in a lane match that was already losing, that just gave SK Telecom so much pressure. People talk about like, oh, he was able to keep up in CS, that worked out well. But, Peanut suddenly had to worry about people coming into his jungle. Immediately, we saw Blank playing around that advantage in the duo lane, throwing wards on down there. And while they weren't able to set up and get these kills, they did just sort of shut down Peanut's early pressure. And Peanut went into this mode where it's like, okay, I need to farm up so we can get to a point to carry, and he didn't put out the defensive ward visions. This is something that Peanut failed to do in that first series, in that first match rather, was change and be able to set up wards for his team. And so because he was shut down from his options, and because Rocks Tigers mentally, likely, was on the defensive, they couldn't, they were exposed up and open, and Blank just had free reign of the map, and he got a lot of early kills through his ganks that Peanut wasn't anticipating, that Rocks weren't prepared for, just because they didn't have a defensive vision net. And this is something I want to talk about the Rocks Tigers in terms of their vision in just a moment, just because we finally kind of seen that storyline, flesh out in the final. But aside from that Game 1, it was overall a very good series. It was very back and forth. It was exciting to see, and it really could have gone either way. Games 2, 3, and 4 could have been either way. And that's something I want, people to remember, is that this was a very competitive final, and that speaks a lot to, how far Rocks have come in this current meta, as well as a testament to how good of a coach Koma is, even though he is given quite a huge advantage in terms of the talent that he has maintained, the talent that he's kept from last year. So it's a very excellent final. It's just absolutely fantastic. You need to see it, as well as the production value. After seeing this OGN broadcast and seeing like this final live, it was entertaining. It was an amazing experience, and it strikes me as dumbfounded, as a side tangent, that we're going to be losing half of OGN's broadcast to Spove TV because Riot Games wants control of the fucking broadcast. So save that for later. Save that for later. So people will kind of look back and be like, oh, SKT's just as dominant as ever. But no, Rocks can step up and Rocks can challenge them. However, I feel like what happened in this particular matchup is that the meta shifted away to where the counterparts that had to carry on Rocks were inferior to the counterparts on SK Telecom. So looking at this meta and looking at the series itself, Ezreal became a huge pick at the AD carry position. both Prey and Bang popped off on the champion, so that was something big. But, you know, where Prey pulled out like a pocket Twitch pick, he looked awful on it. You know, he just continually walked up to the front line, tried to rat-tat-tat right in front of him, and he was just instantly killed several times there. So his positioning on Twitch was pretty bad, which is weird considering that, you know, it's a champion that he's historically known for. And then you have Kuro as well, who needs to be able to, you know, keep a pressure in lane, be able to kind of abuse the fact that Faker is going for champions that are more about the counter picks and focusing on the lane, like Cassiopeia and Vel'Koz, rather than going to, like, you know, the double teleport thing. But Kuro's teleports in this series were, and Rox's teleports in general, were a little, they were reaching. They were very deep. They tried to use these deep wards to come up from behind, and they just weren't working. So Rox wasn't getting the collapses or the dives that we were really used to seeing. So when you have these standard lanes, you know, it's good for Smed because he can lane very well against Duke, and I think that Gorilla and Prey showed that, hey, they can go even with Bang and Wolf, but once you move into the team fighting phase, it's a completely different animal. In that regard, I feel like it's sort of Gorilla that kind of gets Prey through laning phase, even though Prey is very good at it, whereas it's Bang that gets Wolf through laning phase, like undoubtedly so. But you know, it was very strong lanes from both sides, with different counterparts here. But when you have, I think it's safe to say after this final that Bang is the best AD carry in the world. He's been, I think it was safe to say that, like, for a long time, particularly after 2015 Worlds, where, you know, China fell apart there, and like Bang has been the ever-living, he has like the highest level of consistency I think I've personally ever seen an AD carry. This is coming from a viewer who came in Season 3, so I've missed out on some of the early great AD carries. But Bang is, he never has a bad game, really. And if he makes a mistake, and if he like loses at a critical fight, that's when SK Telecom loses. But when he doesn't make those mistakes and he wins, that's when SK Telecom wins. And we've just seen him consistently, like his way of navigating team fights, touching those skill shots, his, you know, laning is very good, you know, regardless of what the matchup seems to be. He always has a positive impact on the game in some way. And when the pressure falls on him to do the carrying, when the team is like, okay, it's you or nothing, he always steps up. He always shows that. I think that after this, you have to say that Bang is the best AD carry in the world. And so let's slide from that conversation into the topic of SK Telecom. So while I think Coma is the best coach in the world, he's won 2 world championships, he's taken, you know, rosters to it, he is gifted with the talent that he has on the team. Okay, so Wolf's nothing too special, but Faker and Bang, he has the 2 best players in the world at the main carry positions in the game. Like, that makes your life just so easy as a coach. And I do not mean this as a kind of flaming of him, but he's given a lot of tools, and so I want to see him in an environment where, you know, he doesn't have like those 2 positions filled by the best positional players in the world. That's what I want to see. However, looking at what he's been able to do, integrating Duke into the roster, Duke's teleports have been largely great in this game. Even though Duke had some individual misplays and some of his teleports also didn't work like the Tigers, Duke has come a long way from what we used to see at the start of the season. And I do also think some of that is a bit helped by the meta shifts that occurred, which I'll talk about in a moment. I'll talk about that after, in the rock section, because that's where it really matters, I feel like. And then Blank. You know, Blank was just all-around good jungler. He had a really good series overall, I think. Peanut was, well, I'll say that for Rockstacker section. You know, but he's taken this rookie Blank, and he's made him a champion in the first split. And that's because Blank also, like, filled a fundamental role in the team, and he played his position well. SK Telecom had excellent ward coverage, and that's Blank. That's Blank and Wolf working together. That's a rookie working with, a support who's been around the block for the team, but that's just phenomenal, really, is what it is. So we have to, like, pay respect to that he's had to, he's lost, like, the captain of the team in Marin. He had to, he couldn't field his veteran jungler Bangy just because the meta didn't suit him. So he was able to take Duke, who had his issues integrating within a team, and he had to take Blank, who was a rookie, gifted the chance at IAM to get some really good practice in for SK Telecom to make it this far. And then, lo and behold, you get 2016 Spring Champions and probably MSI champions. So and as also as well, it's not necessarily that SKT is also carried by that talent. Faker, he was very good, he was very consistent in this series, but he wasn't going superstar pop off, and he didn't have to. He had Bang doing that for him, and SK Telecom as a unit was absolutely stellar to see. And this is a roster that it's not the same roster from last year. It's had to integrate new members, and I feel like I'm being a dead horse on that one. So Kolma is very good at teaching his team how to integrate strategy and how to work together, as well as getting players to work into a system. It was absolutely phenomenal. So he is gifted, but we've also seen that what his impact on those players is. I don't think anyone can shape a player the way he can. So, with the case of Rocks. So let's talk about Rocks here. So this is overall, I think, a good showing from them. I was happy with Rocks. So I'm going to talk about this as a fan. Like Rocks is my team fan. So I was very happy with how they showed up here. It was not like the spring. It was not like the spring final where it was just a complete blowout. It was not like the Worlds final where it was just they couldn't even touch SK Telecom in this case. But they showed up very well, I think. Aside from like game 1 and as well as like their coordination issues, it's very clear to see that Rocks stylistically is a fun team to watch. It's a good team to watch, and that the players stepped up. My worries was with Peanut in particular, just because he's never played in a final like this before, but he played up very well. I mean, in some of his plays in Game 4 to delay SK Telecom from stacking 5th Dragons was instrumental, really, in keeping Rock Tigers in the game and preventing 5th Dragons from coming on through. He made a couple of issues throughout the course, but he was always in a good headspace, and he was performing very well throughout, and I feel like you can't really blame it so much on Rocks as it was more like just a systemic problem. When I think across the board, the one game that Smeb got Echo, and that's a champion that he can carry on, really. That was the game that Rocks won, and he almost made a mistake there, and Prey was able to come up on Ezreal in a huge fight at Baron to stop SK Telecom from winning the game, and taking Baron, coming back in the game, and for Rocks Tigers to win that game. But then when Prey was given Twitch, okay, we hit it last pick, we built this comp around it, Prey wasn't able to step up and execute on that. Kuro throughout the series, he looked fairly underwhelming, which is easy to look when you're going up against Faker, and I mean, Fate robbed the guy from like several plays. It was so close, Kuro. So close. But where Rocks Tigers, I think, issues and shortcomings showed was the vision game, which they tried to adapt to throughout the series. When we first saw Peanut play Graves, for example, he went Skirmishers. When he played Graves again in the series, he went Tracker's Knife. So he's trying to, throw down more wards, get more vision for Rocks Tigers. And I think that's something that's very good. And I think that he needs to start moving more towards that, because we saw what happens when, Rocks can't out-team fight someone, when someone team fights better than Rocks. Because that was the question with the style, is that, okay, they play this low vision style, but Peanut's always in the jungler's face, okay, and Rocks Tigers are always winning fights, but what happens when someone can match that? What happens when Peanut just can't go in and solo your jungler, or always be in his face? What happens then? And this is what happens, It's a very close series, and it's a very good series, but they're not able to put themselves into the macro situation or create those favorable flanks on the sides in order to get on SK Telecom. SK Telecom's warding was a key pivotal in the series. They were always able to find where Rocks was coming from, being able to disengage from them safely and not get collapsed on, and Rocks had a harder time opening up for those picks, and sometimes they would try and pick these fights like, oh, we think this member's caught out, but because they didn't have the proper vision around them to see, wait, there's the rest of SK Telecom coming up on in, they picked a couple of fights that went pretty poorly for them. But that being said, it's something that I feel like, they can look at and say, okay, this is something that we need to do. They have, like, the talent in there. Now they need to integrate the strategy. Kind of like what SK Telecom had to do in this series. If Rocks Tigers can take this to the next step, get their vision control down and get the strategy down, it's going to be an absolutely monstrous team to come on in. That being said, we don't know who's going to look good when it comes to the upcoming mid-season changes in League of Legends, but doesn't seem to be shifting like that. The one thing to say, though, to talk about the meta, because I actually think that, I I personally underestimated how Rox was going to be affected by it. I knew Smeb was going to be absolutely fine playing on the tanks, but Rox Tigers as a team was going to be hurting a little bit from the shift from tank top laners. So, if you think back to the start of the split, Duke had a penchant for being solo killed a lot. People like Kuve, I want to say Untara, Smeb, when top lane was about 1v1 fighting and skirmishing and split push dueling, Duke was not looking good in that meta, which was surprising considering that this is sort of like that was his element in a way. We saw Duke carry before on Anjani Empire last year. He got MVP for his carry performances even. So, but with nerfs to Gangplank, with nerfs to Fiora, with Ryze being off the table for Smeb, suddenly, it's a wet noodle fight out there, and Duke doesn't have to worry about the split push game and winning these 1v1 duels, so that takes away a huge window condition for Rox Tigers, because when you think about it, SK Telecom's better players are in mid and AD carry. Okay, so that's the two carries that are better. So that means Rox Tigers are going to have to be able to play around their best players and win team fights, or snowball through the laning phase, which isn't going to happen in mid lane. And, we could see that happen in bot lane, but then you can't touch Bang's team fighting, really. And when Smeb can't get on the back line and kill them himself, that just leaves SK Telecom's back line up and ready to just destroy everyone. So Kuro and, with Kuro not being able to step to Faker and him having a bit of an off series, and Prey as well being somewhat inconsistent in this final, amazing on Ezreal, pretty shitty on Twitch, Rox's best player wasn't in position to carry. He's forced to play in a supportive role. So it's like the curse again happens, where the meta shifts and Rox Tigers, they didn't fall apart this time though, but they didn't have the same flexibility. They thrive in this meta where they can juggle around who carries, when they can put Prey on a more supportive AD carry like Ashe, set up team fights for them, and just play to that. Really, they can shuffle it around. Okay, Prey can carry on this game. We can put resources into him and be okay. We can take resources, put them into Smeb, let him do the carrying for us. When they can't do that, and Smeb is forced to go on a utility role, that takes away a lot of their impact in the game. And we saw it here. The one game Rox Tigers did win and got their biggest lead in, Smeb took over, really. He kind of did through it, and Rox Tigers didn't snowball it properly, which I think is something to say, which is representative of the macro issues or shortcomings the team currently has. But, it was Smeb, and for the first time, it was Smeb showing that when he steps up and he carries, he can do that. But the meta wasn't in a place for him to do so. Maybe they should have switched over to Gangplank in this series, just let him play a game on it, just farm into Duke's Poppy, but at the same time, the nerfs to Gangplank make it pretty difficult to carry. They didn't have a whole lot of success with it there. Who knows, really? Who knows what they should have done? But I think that, they should have probably, after Prey dropped the ball with Twitch, I think that, in that Game 4, certainly in Game 5, I think you could do it. So I think in Game 5, that's something that you do, and maybe that's what they were waiting for. But, with all... Yeah, I think I've hit that point fairly enough. But Peanut was stellar. Well, okay, maybe stellar is too strong of a word. But Peanut was very good. None of the Rox Tigers seemed like they had a mental block, and it seemed like they're in a very good headspace. And I think that they are, a very strong team. Potentially at times they can be the best in the world, and they have been the best in the world. But they never peak at the right time. It's always in the regular season. It's always early on in the regular season. But when the final comes around, when SK Telecom just shows up, they've figured, they're just the perfectly oiled machine, as it were, and the meta shifts away to take away some of the strengths from Rox Tigers. They just never get it right. The timing is never there, as if fate is just cruelly taking it away from them. And that, the other players on Rox that need to step up don't do it. So who knows where to go from here? Who knows where to go from here? Honestly, I don't know where to go from here for the Rox Tigers. But it's very exciting to see that we had just a great final. It was a great final overall. The games were fantastic, and depending on how the rest of this year goes, it could, it's a candidate for one of the best series of the year. And for the LCK final, after what has been a fairly lackluster playoff run, or not playoff run, from just playoffs in general with SK Telecom just rolling over everybody. It's very nice to see. So I'm very happy with this final. I'm excited to see what happens with the meta changes next season, how teams adapt to that, what comes back into the meta, and maybe in summer Rox Tigers are going to be winning, because I feel like there's time ticks for them, and how long that they have, and I want to see them win. So, but thank you guys for checking out this video. Watch that final.